Hey, what's up guys? It's Pedro here from noobcoder.com, and in this tutorial we're just going to be talking about conditional statements, specifically if and else statements. So to start this off, we're going to have to get used to what are known as comparison operators. So I'm going to create a variable called result, and I'm going to assign it either a true or false, but I want to give it an expression that is going to evaluate to either true or false. So for example, I can say 1 is less than 2. So if I do that, is 1 less than 2? The answer is yes. So if I print this out onto the console, hit Control S to save, Control B, right click, reveal in Explorer, double click, and get rid of that, hit F12, and you can see that that expression evaluates to true. Now I can say is 1 greater than 2? Control B, and if I hit refresh, when I head back to my browser, you can see no, 1 is not greater than 2. So we have other comparison operators. We already did less than, we did greater than, we can do less than equal to, we can do greater than equal to, or we could do equals comparison operator. And there's even a not equals to operator. Okay, so those are the basics of comparison operators. So now that that's out of the way, let's talk about if statements. So in order to create an if statement, all I need to do is type if parentheses, and within these parentheses is going to be an expression that's going to evaluate to either true or false. To give an example, I'm just going to type 1 is equal to 1. Now obviously this is going to evaluate to true because 1 is equal to 1. When this is true, that means the code underneath the if statement is going to execute. So let's give some code. So I'm going to say console.log 1 is equal to 1. End it with a semicolon, Control S to save, head over to our browser, hit refresh, and you can see that the code is being executed. 1 is equal to 1. Now let's head over back to our editor and let's change this. Let's say if 1 is equal to 2 instead, right? Control S to save. Now obviously this is going to evaluate to false, and let's see what happens. Head over to our browser, hit refresh, and you can see nothing's being printed out. And that's because in order for this code to execute, this has to be true. So since 1 is equal to 2 evaluates to false, I'm not going to execute this code here. So now is a good time to introduce us to the else statement. So we're just going to go to the next line. I'm going to type else, and then we're going to do a printout. And we're going to say console.log 1 does not equal to 2. Close it with a semicolon, Control S to save, head over to our browser, we're going to hit the refresh, and you can see 1 does not equal to 2. So what's happening here? Okay, so when you have an if statement, this is going to evaluate to either true or false. If this evaluates to false, it's going to automatically execute the code in else. So that's why we get a printout of 1 does not equal to 2. Now let's try it if 1 is equal to 1 again. Control S to save. Head over to my browser. Hit the refresh button. And you can see 1 is equal to 1. Now what's happening now? Well, if this evaluates to true, this if statement, then it says, hey, don't bother executing what's in the else statement. So just execute your code, but don't execute this code in the else statement. And now the last point that I want to make is this code that we have here is fine if we only want to introduce one line of code after the if or one line of code after the else. But if you want to execute multiple lines of code, if this condition is true, then you're going to need curly braces. So you have braces like this, hit enter, copy this code here, Control X, Control V, and now you could have as much statements here as you want. So I could copy and paste this 1,000,000 times. And now what will happen is that when this is true, it's going to execute everything that's in between these two curly braces. So now let's head over to our browser. And we're just going to hit refresh. And now you can see, since 1 is equal to 1, everything within those curly braces was executed. So each of these print statements was executed onto the console. And likewise, this will also work for the else statement. So if I put these curly braces here, and this time I'm actually going to do it with a single line of code, just to show you that as long as you have these curly braces, if this fails, this whole block will execute because it's within this else statement. So if I was to say if 1 is equal to 2, Control S to save, head over to my browser, hit refresh, you can see that even if you put one statement, it will still execute just fine. So as long as you're within these braces, you're perfectly fine.